Not impressed with the PlayStation 5? I'm going to show you 10 games that would change your mind. These titles range from action-adventure, role-playing, sports, first-person shooting, right down to psychological horror. So if there's nothing on here that interests you, then you might want to go find another hobby. Number 10. The Medium. Psychological horror never looked so good. Played from a third-person perspective, The Medium has you taking on the role of Marianne, a medium herself who has the ability to communicate with the spirit world. You get a phone call one day from someone named Thomas, who's willing to explain the origins of your powers. But the catch is, he'll only meet you at an abandoned vacation resort, out in the middle of nowhere. Now, why does it always have to be some abandoned building? Why isn't it ever at a crowded coffee shop? Anyway, the game starts off like Resident Evil with its fixed camera angles, but after a while, you can't help but notice it shares a lot more in common with the Silent Hill series. The entire thing looks very cinematic, although a bit creepy. It's not overly violent, but just very moody. The tracking shots in particular convey a sense of mystery and unsettledness I can't quite put into detail. A lot of the suspense I feel comes from the anticipation of expecting something to happen. It's when you let your guard down that the scares truly set in. You wander through the environment searching for clues, but the main draw of the game comes from the ability to inhabit both worlds, the spirit world and the real world, you could say. The screen splits, and whenever your character moves in one world, it takes place in the other world. It's mostly used as a way to solve environmental puzzles, but it's a cool concept and one I've never seen before. This game took me by complete surprise. Not only is it scary, but it's beautiful to look at. Well-written dialogue also gives the character a sense of character, I guess. It almost feels as if you're both in this journey together. Dark, beautiful, and creepy. If you're a fan of old school Resident Evil and Silent Hill, then you have to check out The Medium. Definitely a hidden gem. Number 9. Metro Exodus Complete Edition. Released in 2019 on previous gen consoles, developer 4A Games brings their first-person shooter to PlayStation 5. You assume the role of Artyom, the protagonist who's trying to flee the Moscow metro with a group of friends on a train called the Aurora. Now, I don't know about you, but the thought of going on a road trip with a bunch of friends through the post-apocalyptic wastelands of the former Russian Federation sounds like quite the adventure to me. I mean, what could go wrong? The thing that stood out to me instantly about this game was just how immersive everything felt. You're given the ability to wipe away water and debris from your goggles, for instance. Not sure if it really cleared up the screen, but it did give off a sense that I was actually wearing goggles. A dynamic weather system as well as a day and night cycle brings you into the world of Metro Exodus even more. The game also features linear and sandbox environments, something that threw me off a little bit in the beginning. From a gameplay perspective, I would say it's a lot slower than most first-person shooters I've played. It isn't all run and gun. Granted, there are intense shootouts, but you also have the slower, quieter moments. It's a thinking man's first-person shooter. Don't expect a game like Killzone if you're new to this franchise. There's also a surprising element of survival horror to the game as well. My favorite moments are when monsters just get all up in your face. Totally unexpected and very cinematic. Overall, just really cool looking. As a matter of fact, the entire game looks amazing. I'd have to say, absolutely beautiful looking smoke effects. The complete edition on PlayStation 5 comes with full ray trace lighting, reduced load times, 4K texture packs, spatial audio, as well as haptic feedback support. If you're looking for a different kind of first-person shooter that isn't just mindless shooting, then give Metro Exodus a try. You'll be pleasantly surprised. Number 8. Control Ultimate Edition. An action-adventure game where you're tasked with containing and studying phenomena that violate the laws of reality. Built in the Metrovania format, you're given a large world map to explore at a non-linear pace. Having no prior knowledge of the game before playing, I wasn't sure what to expect. And after playing it for a bit, I still don't know how to explain it. It's sort of like Resident Evil with its creepy tone and atmosphere, but combined with X-Men powers. The gunplay feels great, thanks mostly in part to the PS5's adaptive triggers. Firing shots give off this feeling of resistance each time you pull on the trigger. It's pretty cool. It gives the shots a lot more impact, I guess you could say. Another thing worth noting is that your weapon reloads automatically after entering a cooldown phase. It's a nice change since you won't have to worry about running out of ammo. I would also like to mention how awesome this game looks. Melee attacks and special abilities make great use of the destructible environments. Ultimate Edition on PlayStation 5 includes the original release with its DLC, plus a 60 FPS performance and 30 FPS ray tracing modes. The gameplay does take a few minutes to get used to, especially the part of not having to reload. But I think once you get a hang of it, Control turns into one of those games where you can't put the controller down because you're so interested to see what happens next. Number 7. Lost Judgment. You know, I never really thought Sega would bounce back after going third party, but with a recent string of successful titles, I think they're finally starting to come into their own. The Yakuza series and now its most recent spin-off, Lost Judgment, is a prime example of that. Once again, you take control of Takayuki Yagami as you explore the Japanese cities of Kamurocho and some other city which I won't even attempt to pronounce. You're a private detective hired to investigate whether any bullying has been taking place at a nearby high school. Upon further discovery, you learn of a suicide and possible cover-up. It's not the most original story you'll ever hear, but I will admit, it's told rather well. The writing, surprisingly, is very good. Characters appear believable, and there's a human quality to them. It's almost as if the developers really cared about the story. There's a lot of dialogue to get through, but not once did I find myself bored or uninterested. Another thing that surprised me is that the game can be funny at times. Not all jokes will appeal to everyone, but for the most part, they do hit their mark. If you enjoyed the last game, then you'll definitely like this one. A few gameplay features make a return, such as stealth, platforming, and tailing missions where you chase suspects around the city. Lost Judgment also features various new side missions and mini games as well. A nice diversion to help keep things interesting. The most notable feature that makes a return, at least in my opinion, is access to emulations of classic Sega games. Whether you're playing on the Master System at the office or just happen to run by the Club Sega arcades, Lost Judgment provides a great way to relive some of Sega's classic titles. Combat is fun as ever, and with various difficulty settings, there's a playstyle for gamers of all skill levels. Fans of action-adventure games should definitely check out Lost Judgment. A return to form for Sega indeed, and I couldn't be happier. Number 6. Death Stranding, Director's Cut. I spent 8 weeks with the Dalai Lama in deep meditation, and I have to say, I've never felt as contented as I did while playing this game. There's a strange feeling of freedom and satisfaction I got from just walking. You really do feel like you're out there all by yourself. Whether you're walking on solid concrete, grass, rubble, or whatever surface you happen to be on, you have this feeling of being part of something bigger than yourself. Like there's this giant unknown world out there just waiting to be explored. The only thing you know is what's visibly in front of you, and the only way to find out more is to simply just start walking. That goes to show, it isn't just all walking. There are times where you'll have to sneak around, fend off against attackers, and avoid BTs by throwing vials of piss at them. Is that what it is? There's also a sequence where you're fighting a giant whale, I think. I don't know. Don't ask me. Hey, is that Herman Holtz from PlayStation Studio? There's so much to Death Stranding, yet when trying to describe it to a friend seems almost impossible without making it sound too simplistic. Is it a UPS simulator? I mean, you do deliver packages, but underneath it all is so much more. It's how you prepare for that delivery, what psychological state of mind you're in, and the journey you experience as you make your way to your destination. It's the quiet moments, the tense moments, the unnerving moments, the moments of urgency as you realize your cargo is taking too much damage, the moments of victory as you spot your destination in the distance, the moments of relief when you've made it back to your bed, the moments of seeing traces of life left behind by other players in the Death Stranding universe. By the way, remind me to thank the person who left this ladder behind. Remastered on PS5 with 2 new graphical settings, 3D audio, DualSense controller support, faster loading, as well as a new widescreen mode, which you're looking at right now. If you're in the mood for something strange, emotional, and completely different, then give Death Stranding a try. It's sure to make you take notice of the PlayStation 5. Number 5. Riders Republic. I'm not the biggest fan when it comes to sports video games, so I was a bit skeptical going into this one. But to my surprise, Riders Republic turned out to be a lot of fun. And I think the main reason why is because it's so easy to pick up and play. There's a slight learning curve with landing your snowboard after a jump, which you can set to auto in the options menu. But other than that, after a few races, the game becomes pretty accessible regardless of skill level. The 4 main activities available include mountain biking, snowboarding, skiing, and wingsuit flying. They all play great and each have their own unique style. Pulling off tricks is simple and fun, and they don't require extensive combinations either. Above all else, they look cool. I think my favorite has to be skiing, only because there's really not that many skiing games out there, or if any. Riders Republic is set in an open world that combines 7 distinct national parks in the western United States into one gigantic single map. There are social hubs in which you can meet and interact with other players online. An event I assume many will want to experience called Mass Races Competition sees a total of 64 players going at it. These races are just flat out crazy. I don't think I've ever seen that many players on screen at once before, especially in a racing game. Not only that, but I'm amazed at how smoothly everything ran. Yeah, there's a bit of screen tearing, but considering what's happening on screen, who really cares? As you progress through the career mode, which I have to admit is quite entertaining, you unlock new gear, outfits, and cosmetic items for your character. If you're a sports fan looking for high-octane action, then Riders Republic will surely impress. This one comes highly recommended. Number 4. Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade. Upgraded for next gen with a whole host of improvements. Faster load times, better textures, and various system enhancements have been reworked into the PS5 release. The first thing you'll notice right off the bat is visual clarity. Intergrade looks a hell of a lot sharper on Sony's current gen console. Not only that, but the addition of fog, volumetric lighting, and bloom help elevate the graphics even more. These are all nice visual improvements, but I think the most important upgrade of all is the 60 FPS performance mode. If you thought the game looked good before, just wait till you see it running at a higher frame rate on PS5. In addition to the performance boost, Square Enix also incorporated adaptive trigger support for the PS5's DualSense controller. All these new graphical enhancements are great, but how's the actual game, you might ask? In one word, a masterpiece. Yeah, that's right, I said masterpiece. Fight me. Combat is smooth and feels like a nice evolution of the original. It has that active time battle feel, but with a faster pace, more in line with recent games today. If you're a fan of the original, then you'll absolutely love the remake. The game looks amazing, and being able to see everything remade with modern technology makes everything even more nostalgic. My heart swells when I see a particular scene that I recognize from long ago. There were so many moments I remember from the original, and some that were completely unrecognizable. Some story elements have been extended, some were added, and some even taken out. But for the most part, I was very pleased with the remake. Here's hoping Part 2 doesn't take forever to come out. Number 3. Ghost of Tsushima Director's Cut. Released first on PlayStation 4 and now upgraded for current gen. Bumped up to a full 4K resolution running at a locked 60 FPS, Ghost of Tsushima on PlayStation 5 looks phenomenal. Along with the increase in resolution, you can expect a few quality of life changes as well. Loading has now been reduced to practically nothing. Say goodbye to checking your email while the game loads. There's also an option to increase the gust of wind, making it easier to see what direction you have to go in. Enemy target lock has been added, as well as haptic and adaptive trigger support for the DualSense. Cutscenes are now rendered in real time, along with proper lip sync while using Japanese audio. In addition, you also get the Iki Island expansion all on one disc. If you have yet to play this game, then this is the definitive version to get. The amount of care and detail that went into its design is staggering. From the gorgeous visuals right down to the combat system, there isn't one area of the game that doesn't impress. Switching back and forth between stances is simple but fun, and it's also a breath of fresh air to see how clean the UI is. The screen isn't cluttered with a crap ton of icons, leaving you room to appreciate the beautiful graphics on display. It offers just the right amount of information at exactly the right time. Saying that I had a good time with this game would be an understatement. Ghost of Tsushima Director's Cut is one of the most fun and addictive games I've played in a long time. Number 2. Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy. I'm gonna be honest with you here. I was not expecting much from this game when I first heard about it. I'd figured it would be similar to the Avengers, but to my surprise, this might be one of the best third-person action-adventure games I've ever played. In terms of gameplay, I would say it's similar to X-Men Legends, but with less role-playing elements. Although you can spend skill points on new abilities, it's not as extensive as Legends. Guardians is a more straight-up action single-player experience. The camera is pulled in a little tighter, similar to Uncharted and Gears of War, with teammates being controlled by quick button menu commands. They each have their own special attacks that make them unique and fun to use. Groot can use his vines to immobilize enemies, while Gamora can dish out devastating attacks with her sword. Rocket can use his rockets, I guess. I don't know. Traversing the gorgeous looking environments requires more than just moving from one point to the next. Blocked passages require you to use your weapons or call upon a teammate in order to clear them. A violent storm early on even requires you to carefully move from cover to cover. Visually, the game looks phenomenal. Great looking action set pieces make you finally realize why you bought a PS5 in the first place. The game also does a good job keeping you involved in the story. Making key decisions via dialogue trees is actually a lot of fun. It really really does make the cutscenes more interactive. You feel almost as if your decisions affect the outcome of the game. On top of that, the story is funny. Or should I say the characters, I mean. Well-written dialogue and superb voice acting gives the character life and personality. And the excellent 80s soundtrack doesn't hurt either. There's also a few quick time events thrown in there as well. My only complaint with the game is that it might get a tiny bit repetitive. The shooting, I mean. Fortunately, production value is through the roof, so it more than makes up for it. If you're a Marvel fan that happens to like story-driven games with great dialogue, fantastic visuals, and an excellent soundtrack, then this is the game for you. Highly recommended. Number 1. Kena, Bridge of Spirits. This has to be one of the best games I've ever played. Unfortunately, it doesn't start out that way, so have patience. The game doesn't tell you exactly what you need to do or where to go, so you'll have to do a bit of exploring. Yeah, remember back when games didn't hold your hand all the time? You take on the role of Kena, a young spirit guide with magical abilities who tries to help deceased people move from the physical to the spirit world. It's a third-person action-adventure game reminiscent of classic action games of the past. The gameplay might be nostalgic, but in this day and age, it's actually a breath of fresh air. I mean, how often do we get a title like this in a sea of shooters and GTA clones? I know that last statement is bound to trigger some people. Where's that one prick who always complains about something? The gameplay is pretty basic with light, heavy, and charged attacks. You can swing your staff or use it as a bow and arrow. You also have a pulse ability, which acts as a shield and can provide clues within the environment. There's a very limited upgrade system, which I'm perfectly okay with. The game's runtime is roughly 8 hours, so I don't even think it's necessary to have much of an extensive move list. Maybe in the sequel. The thing that caught my eye immediately was the art style and presentation. It's very much like watching a Pixar film. There's also certain cues that remind me of the Studio Ghibli films as well. For my anime fans, you'll know what I'm talking about. I absolutely love the animation that plays when you purify the force of corruption. It's just so cool. I especially love the rot characters. They're small spirit companions you collect throughout the game that help with completing a puzzle or defeating an enemy. I thought they would be a nuisance since they're always there, but it actually works out better than I thought. The story isn't going to win any awards, but its charming characters and majestic score makes up for it. Coming from an indie developer, I'm actually quite impressed with what Ember Lab was able to do. This is a hell of a lot better than some of the big budget AAA games out there. If you're nostalgic for some classic action adventure gaming, then look no further than Kena, Bridge of Spirits. A hidden gem all the way. I'm looking at you, Metal Jesus. Now, for something completely different, if you want to see what PlayStation 4 games look and play better on PS5, then click the links on the screen or the ones that are pinned down below. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.